over the next, 5 years, 10 years? What should we expect to see from McBride Sisters?
Probably expect the unexpected.
The moment that you met your sister for the first time, not even knowing she existed, what an incredible story.
Yeah. No, we definitely have a very unique path that we took to getting into the wine business, but it definitely starts with, our sister's story, which is, one that my sister Andrea and I didn't know about each other when we were growing up. We both were born in LA. We have the same dad, but we have two different moms. My mom divorced from him when I was really little, like not even 2 years old, and left LA. And she moved us up to Monterey, where I grew up, and he remarried, had Andrea 9 years after I was born. Her mom eventually divorced him, but she moved back to her home country of New Zealand. So, and Andrea was like 5 or 6 years old at that time. And unfortunately, her mom had breast cancer that was terminal. And so not too long after they moved there, she lost her mom. And it wasn't until, years later when our dad was terminally ill himself, and he asked his family to find both of his daughters. They found Andrea first in New Zealand, and then they found me a few years later. By the time they did, our dad had already passed away. But at that point, I guess I was 25. Andrea was 16 years old. It's a very life-changing moment if you're, an only child and suddenly you find out you have a sibling. And as luck would have it, she was visiting the States when I got the letter and learned about her. Had a day or so to digest the idea that I now had a sister and I was going to get to meet her in person.
That's unbelievable. Well, at that, did you all decide, wait a minute, we should actually start a business together and start importing wines?
It wasn't immediate that we were like, oh, wow, we both like wine, like that. In a sense, almost was the furthest thing from our mind, quite honestly, because we were still trying to, figure out who this person is. And, we had a lot of lifetime really to catch up on, right? Because I'm like, what have you been doing for 18 years? What was your life like? Like, who are you? And we literally just like downloaded entire lives with each other when she moved to California. And we did so though in wine country where we would meet halfway.
Love it.
And it's where we got to know each other. We got to know who we were, how we lived our lives, and really bonded in this backdrop, this beautiful backdrop, of wine country. We were very familiar with the business of wine in terms of like grape growing and winemaking. Those are the families that we grew up around, the areas that we grew up in. We didn't love, though, now that we were young women and we were going to these places for us to spend, a good portion of a day, most of the time, many hours in tasting rooms and wineries. We didn't really love the way that we were treated, to be honest. We didn't look like normal wine connoisseurs. She's a college kid, over 6 feet tall. And we just didn't kind of fit the bill. And so, but I mean, that didn't deter us. We're here, this is what we like to do. But we started to think about, man, this experience could be a lot different for us and probably a whole lot of other people, right? Everything sort of lined up for us where she had to figure something out. I had to figure something out while we're discussing that we both have to figure something out. We were in a tasting room with wine in our hands, and we're like, wait a minute, is this, it felt very, in hindsight, it feels very obvious. We decided to kind of figure out a way to get into the business somewhat easier, which was importing wine. So she grew up in New Zealand in wine country. She grew up around winemaking families with vineyards and wineries all around her. The business that I had been in before was kind of like some semiconductor and electronics stuff, but I did the work globally. So I was very familiar with like international trade and commerce. I was like, I can get anything in and out of this country, like no problem. So that felt a little logical to us. So we got licensed as wine importers and distributors, and that's where we started.
and you build this community in LA and San Francisco, and then
Right.
you reach this inflection point and you're like, wait a minute, we're going to build our own brand. I'd love it if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit on how the McBride Sisters collection is like really creating positive change in the industry. I believe there's a lot of different components there.
Wine has historically been very intimidating. We weren't intimidated to be in that space, but we just thought it sucked, right? And it could be so much better, and there would be so many more people that could enjoy wine as a product, but also, you know, wine is sort of a journey, a vehicle to other things as we see it, right? So it's like you get the chance to learn about people, about places, you know, you incorporate it with food, with, you know, entertainment, with, you know, relationships, all of these things. In our perspective, wine plays a piece in that. But if it's too intimidating to even, you know, access at all, like it's just shut off from a lot of folks. So as we like created our business from the beginning, one thing that was super important to us is that we, you know, representation for one is very important. Our point was that, you know, come experience with us, right? Like it's a safe place, if you will. Quite honestly, I think that the industry still struggles with this, you know, because there's been so much that's been built up around terroir and, you know, heritage and all of these things, which are things that can and should be appreciated, but it shouldn't be to the exclusion of people who don't come from a world, you know, where their parents have been drinking wine their whole lives, or there's cellars in the house, or they have the ability to go study, you know, old world European wines and have the confidence needed to just go out and order a glass with dinner, right? So everything is really built up around that. And again, like representation is huge. It's like, so we show diverse people, you know, enjoying wines and in places where wine hasn't historically maybe been present. You know, it's at whatever ball games, you know, we have our wines in cans, and you know, young people and mixed groups of people, you know, who are our actual consumers, right? Enjoying the wines, writing about wines, pairing wines, ourselves included, of course, because we are and have been so outside of the norm, right? You know, I don't know that we ever really thought it would be possible in our lifetimes to get industry recognition, but you know, 16 and a half years into it, definitely not an overnight success, right? So a lot of grinding and a lot of hard work that kind of got us to this place.
Who is the mentor, if you don't mind me asking, that's been most pivotal for you in your career?
Early on in our career, for the first decade and a half, we didn't know we didn't understand the necessity of it. We didn't know how to find somebody in our space because we felt like we didn't see women of color particularly. And so we kind of went without. And in hindsight, things could have been so much different if we did have mentors, if we did have people to seek advice from who could, you know, help us like along our journey.
Any words of wisdom that you would like to communicate to other founders that are on their way up, that are most meaningful to you, what would that be?
Well, that there is no overnight success, right? I think that a lot of people have, I mean, maybe there was one or two, but I think they're mostly in movies, or they are curated founder stories that they tell on stages. But I think the reality is that it really is about endurance, right? And it's about being nimble. It's about educating yourself, but it's about being prepared, you know, to do it for the long run and to go the long haul. We see and talk with a lot of people who are very smart and excited and energetic, have great ideas, you know, maybe even have great support and funding, but aren't necessarily prepared for the length of time that it can take to build a really successful business and to bring, you know, their passion to life. So, and I feel like people don't tell people that often. You know, they're kind of like, oh, it's hard, and you know, you got to work hard. Like you have to be performing at a really high level for a long period of time, you know, to truly have a successful business. And you know, or people burn out, you can lose sight of your passion, and that's something that isn't shared often. Wasn't shared with us either. So
I appreciate you. This is such a fantastic, inspiring talk to hear your story and where you started, and you know what the future looks like, and the excitement and the surprise and the delight that's ahead. And I'm really grateful for you. And thank you. appreciate everything that you do and that you're doing for the industry. And, it means the world to me. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.